Welcome to the IP2 Podcast. Today we will break down last week's news and do a deep dive into Tier 2 events. But first, Felix, what have you been up to?
Well, I just got home a couple days ago, so trying to recover from the time zone difference, but I did manage to play in an armory yesterday and one when I was away as well. Had a lot of fun, as always.
How was the one when you were out?
I love the armories in Moncton. It's Blitz right now, so I still get to play with my Prism, and yeah, they have really strong players over there. Lost a close one against a Dromai in my last game there. And honestly, just amazing to be able to play Flesh and Blood wherever I travel. How about you?
Yeah, I had a really busy weekend. A couple weeks ago was my birthday, and my wife planned which a secret or surprise party for me this weekend. We're big board gamers, as we mentioned before. Had some friends travel 600 kilometers to come meet for a board game weekend, and we had, I think up to 20 people at one point in the house chatting, playing board games, and everybody left today, and now it's a recording session, and I'm pretty tired. It was a long weekend. It was a lot of fun. I did actually get to also go to an armory today, where I went 1-2, but my win was a bye, so Riptide struggled today, but that's okay.
Poor Riptide. Is this CC or Blitz?
It was CC.
CC Riptide's still a bit of a tough nut to crack, eh?
Yeah, I'm still working on my own jank right now. I wouldn't call it jank. I'm actually trying to make him good. Again, I like to try and prove to myself that cards are bad. So nobody likes aim counters, so I'm trying to make aim counter Riptide work. And honestly, the games didn't feel that one-sided. I think in one of my matchups against Uzuri, I sideboarded the wrong cards, and it would have made a big difference had I put in the proper traps instead of some other cards that didn't work out. So I think, with playing with him and learning how he works, I think I could maybe make something happen. I don't know if I'll ever win a RTN with him or anything like that, but...
So this is exactly what I remember you saying about Prism and Icelander when they were spoiled and when they were quite raw, so I fully expect Riptide to be meta. You heard it here first, because Shea is working on it, and he is brewing. The power level of the deck is going to grow exponentially week after week.
Okay, and I'm not super confident about that, but I like it. We'll take it.
Are you on a Sandscour or Death Dealer?
No, I'm on Castaway right now.
Castaway?
Yeah, so it's a bit more blue centric, so that I can pay for a buff and then use Riptide's ability to load, and then use the other two to flip and fire the arrow with an aim counter. Now, I think if you look at the raw stats of an aim counter, they're low for, paying a resource and getting essentially a +1 buff is not very good return, but it increases the value of those cards, and Riptide struggles with going wide, going tall, so maybe the aim counter can be a little bit more efficient and not have to use as many cards to present the same amount of damage.
Okay, well, I hope our listeners will stay tuned for every week the Riptide update. I cannot wait personally to hear about the evolution of our new Tier 0 deck coming up here.
Yeah.
Only on the IP2 podcast. Let's jump into news right now.
Yeah. All right.
So the banned and restricted, or the banned and suspended announcement, my apologies, they changed the name. It dropped a couple days ago. And, well, short and simple summary here. No change to CC, and a couple Living Legend updates to Blitz, with Oldham and Icelander leaving, but also Drone of Brutality coming back into Blitz. And this is a card I have never had the chance to play with. But Shea, were you playing the game when Drone was still legal?
Yes, I was. Very early in the North American history of Flesh and Blood. Drone was legal. There was Ira Drone was a deck that was top tier, and it was mostly just armories at the time. We didn't really have major events that Drone impacted. So while I was around, it wasn't a popular strategy. There also wasn't a lot of content out there for North Americans to take advantage of the drone lists where I think they were over in APAC. They were being used a lot more. So I would say for the most part, not really impacted by it.
Okay. And you, I think, are a lot better at Blitz than I am historically. And to me, though, when I think about drone now, it just seems a little bit slow to me in a pretty high-powered format where you don't have a lot of life. I guess, is that kind of what you feel as well about drone? Or because I just see so much people buying up like double play sets of drone. People think it's going to be the best thing ever. I don't know if I'm just undervaluing it right now because I've never really seen it, or I guess what's your take on that?
Yeah, I don't know why it's blowing up all over the internet like you mentioned, but I think the same thing. Again, it's too slow. What is drone going to do in a 3-turn format? Your hero has to really revolve around that long game plan, fatigue kind of strategy. Sure, it's doable, I guess, if you want to just try and attack with drone every turn. So there's going to be a merit. I think it's there for the ability to do a fatigue style deck or a long game plan style deck. It's just it's a tool.
Well, I guess we'll track the evolution of the Blitz metagame here and see if we look like fools. I don't know. I feel moderately confident that drone is not going to take over Blitz, but
yeah, probably not.
Been wrong before.
Absolutely. I guess it could shape the meta. Who knows?
Yeah. I guess quick fun fact, drone is a replacement effect because it says instead. It is not a trigger that you can respond to. So I do have to ask you from a personal level, what is your favorite replacement effect in the game?
You know, it was an interesting question when you posed it to me this evening, and I didn't really thought about replacement effects and their favorite ability, but kind of skimming through some of the cards, I really enjoy Vestige of Soul, actually. I think it's a really, I always like the alternatives to Tunic. Tunic is an overplayed card. It's hard to argue with its power, so see something like Vestige of Soul and what it can do, and it can do some ridiculous things if you can get those sweet combo turns off. That can power a huge turn, as well as provide some additional power throughout the game. It's just unreliable, and I think that's why Tunic is so good, is it's consistent. You know exactly when you're going to get it, you know exactly how you're going to use it. So the replacement effect on Vestige is a little bit more varied, but yeah, I think that's what my answer would be. How about you, Felix? What do you think is your favorite?
So I have a couple. Mordred Tide is one that comes to mind because it's always my opponent on Viserai that slams down a Mordred Tide and just comes in with like Revel for 7, and there's Read the Runes making, I don't know, like another 6. I don't know. It's crazy stuff going on there. So I have the most mental damage from Mordred Tide, but my favorite is Flicker Wisp because it is a fun card that everyone forgets about, and I think I opened like 6 of them in one box of Tales of Aria. I'm not sure if it's good. I don't think it's good. Is it good?
Flicker Wisp? No.
Yeah.
I love the card, though. I was just, I said earlier, I was a little disappointed that you chose Flicker Wisp as your favorite card, because I do have a little affinity with it. It did win my top 8 round at Battle Hardened. I was able to fuse it and kill my opponent with 2 arcane damage at
nice
with Flicker Wisp, so it's got a sweet spot in my heart. So yeah,
that's awesome. I guess fun fact also about Vestige of Soul is I was talking last episode about how fractal replication was a rules nightmare for judges, and you might see a lot of judge exam questions about fractal replication, or at least a quiz. Vestige, when you combine it with things like Talisman of Recompense and other different effects, can also probably make a judge quiz all on its own. So if anyone starts asking you very specific and detailed questions about Vestige of Soul, you might want to be a little bit suspicious of that. Let's move on, I guess, sort of related to Vestige of Soul, but let's talk a little bit about Dusk Till Dawn. Now, this was technically spoiled over the Pro Tour weekend, so we're a little bit late. Nonetheless, Dusk Till Dawn, we know a little bit more about it now. We know that Prism is coming back in some capacity. We know there's a new Shadow Runeblade coming. You are quite a Prism player, Shay. Are you excited about the prospect of Prism returning in a modified format or a modified form without Luminaris with a different life total? Is that something you're going to be digging into right away, you think?
Absolutely. I was surprised at how much I really enjoyed playing Prism when she LL'd. She's been gone for a while. Dromai came out. For me, it just didn't hit the same mark. Still a board state deck, but for some reason, it's just, I don't know. Prism felt really good. The control aspect and setting up a board state that took a lot of work and you took a lot of damage for and ultimately put your game in jeopardy for to become an uncontrollable monster. I really enjoyed that, I guess. So I'm excited to see what they did to make her fair, and very interested because of the 16 life that she has for Blitz. Maybe she's got some arcane damage, a little bit of wizard in her. Who knows? Not speculating, but I don't know what would make her drop 4 life points in Blitz. That's a big percentage. How about you? Are you excited about it?
Well,
you played a bit of Prism.
I'm playing a little bit of Prism now in Blitz, and now that I do appreciate the playstyle. It is very unique. It is fun to have all of these instants and all of these tricks to keep your opponents guessing. I guess your ability to kind of rope-a-dope your opponent is very similar to the way I feel when I play Lexi. And you have these threats that you can choose to fire off now or later, or keep in your back pocket. You have a lot of ways to trip up your opponent, which I enjoy. I do hope that they can address her very polarized matchup spread, though, as someone that has lost to Prisms on a couple of streams as well, like very embarrassingly, like 32-0 and all of that, as I was on Oldham. I'm hoping that they can address that. Or else I can foresee myself becoming victim to that quite a bit again.
I lost to Adam. We were just practicing over webcam, 40-0. I forget what I was playing. And I was like, that's ridiculous. That shouldn't happen. That's not fair.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel good. So I really do hope that they fix her. And yeah, I agree. Less polarized matchups would be a lot better.
Quick note on Dusk Till Dawn. They are again pushing this narrative aspect. I've noticed they're leaning into this war between the light and shadow. So Solana and the monastery, and they're saying that the entire set will focus on a pivotal 12-hour time window from dusk till dawn where the entire fate of the war remains in the balance. Does that kind of thing interest you, the story tie-in and all of that?
It does. I like that. Well, when they originally announced that story was very important, and we had the lore book. So yeah, I really dig it. I wish to a little degree that it was a bit more consistent, coherent, as opposed to, like, I like that the set has a story, but in Uprising and Dynasty, there was a bit of a story. And I don't know how long of a story I want, but I want more longer story season with theme and characters. I don't know what other games do, but what Flesh and Blood is doing, I really like. I just want a bit more. And you also need to do a better job of it in taking the story that is being given to us, because I haven't been very good at following the narrative that they're pushing. But I do like it. I think it makes it a more complete game as opposed to just random cards being thrown at you. Everfest was a little weird because they had already had a narrative prior to Everfest, and then they chucked out Everfest, and I'm like, oh, that's cool, it's a carnival, but what's happening and why are we doing this thing? What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely really enjoy storylines. I remember fondly reading the Magic the Gathering novels as a kid, and they were really campy, not high literature, but I really enjoyed them. And same thing for reading campaign source books for RPG games. Like, I love knowing the backstory of things, and it just adds a little bit of extra flavor and depth to the pieces that we're playing with. So looking forward to it. I'm just always looking for a little bit more. Like you said, it seemed like there was a little bit of momentum with the Uprising Dynasty arc. We were getting some short stories about the progress of Phi's rebellion and what Dromai was doing to scheme behind the scenes. And I remember there was a cool arc, or the cool moment when we realized that the Emperor was dead up to the Dynasty release. That was quite cool. but then we seem to have lost a little bit of momentum from there from an overall story perspective, but I might be missing something. I don't follow this as closely as some others might.
And that's also some of my concern. Did I miss stuff? And that's why I feel like there's a bit of a gap in it as well. I know LSS does a lot of like Easter egg stuff in their art, and it would be really cool to get a bit more information as opposed to trying to always find it and piece together and surmise what something might be. They utilize the story arc to talk about somebody like in Dusk Till Dawn, but in whatever set follows Dusk Till Dawn, they release that hero that you were talking about. You're like, oh, you get that excitement of like, yeah, that dude sounded awesome, or he's super cool, and you can get excited over something that's being released when you already knew about it. People talk about the Jarl all the time because of the quotes. When and if he ever gets released, that's going to be a super hype moment, and I like that stuff. I think that's going to be really interesting and a good way to keep people interested in the game.
I couldn't agree more. Even something fun like Valda appearing in a couple of cards and then being released as a hero, just little tie-ins like that show how they plan forward. I think that's cool. Next topic is, well, a couple competitive seasons coming up here. There's RTNs coming up imminently, and national championships were announced for, I think, most countries. I think there are a couple just TBD for national champions or national championships, including the USA.
Yeah, missing their venue or something.
Yeah. For us in Canada, though, the date and location has been confirmed, so it looks like it'll be held back in Toronto again. I guess for you, Shea, what are your goals for the upcoming RTN and national championship season as a casually competitive player?
The first one I'll be judging the RTN locally here in Calgary, so that's my goal. I'm going to do my best to prepare for that. Refreshing rules, interactions, and dialing down into, well, we can talk about it later. And then there'll be a second one in our province up in Edmonton in Leduc there. I'm going to attend it, and I haven't decided in what capacity. We were talking about it today at the Armory. I might get in on experience. I'm doing okay on the 90-day. I don't know if the lifetime matters for Nats. I don't think it does, but I think I'm 40th in Canada on the 90-day, so I might just get a natural invite there. So I don't know how hard I'm going to try for the RTN one, who would like to win the gold foil, of course, but I also don't want to necessarily strip away somebody else's opportunity to get an invite to RTN if I already have one. And I don't know when that information is going to be released. If I'm going to play competitively, I'd like to start getting my reps in now and pick my hero and that stuff. So that's my current plan for it. What about you?
I think similar to yourself, and the whole XP qualification aspect does put us in a bit of a quandary because you and I, we do go to Armory events at least once or twice a week, really liking supporting our local stores in those events. So we do accrue a decent amount of XP. But when RTN season starts in earnest and some other places in Canada with potentially 2 events per weekend every weekend start piling up, I kind of see our positions on the 90-day leaderboard just falling off a cliff because we only have the opportunity to play in 2 of those events. That's my worry about counting getting in on 90-day XP.
Yeah. So are you planning on getting an invite through play then, I guess? Is that what, I guess, your goal? Plan, but
oh boy, that's a great question. I don't really know. I don't know if I want to apply for even judging nationals instead of playing if there are leadership positions available. For example, it looks like there's going to be a PTI event. There's going to be side events at the national championships as well as the main event. And typically for a larger event, each of those tasks, so side event and the PTI event, would have an associated head judge. Or if those opportunities present themselves, maybe that would be something I would be interested in applying for. When it comes to local championships, though, I do want to put my best foot forward, both just to challenge myself, but also just to, try to defend our turf. I mean, Shea knows this very well, but just that regional rivalry that we have with Edmonton is important to me. It is a motivating factor, and something like that will certainly motivate me to try to at least knock a couple of them off of making top 8, or if I am lucky enough to make top 8, to knock them out. That's normally a motivator for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I would consider going to nationals if the opportunity arises for judging. I'm not comfortable in the idea of judging a major event in a room full of a bunch of people I don't know. It's already stressful enough doing a tier 2 event in a room of people I do know, a small 40-person event. I'm always nervous. Don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to ruin somebody's event because of an incorrect judge call. So I can't imagine the stress and anxiety behind a room filled with hundreds of people or 100 people and having to make a call that could potentially impact somebody's day.
That's really understandable. And I know, Shea, you got into judging to serve the community locally, right? And to facilitate that experience for your friends and the other members of your community. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. And there's nothing saying that in order to be a proper judge, you have to have such and such experience with larger events at all. Some of the best judges that I know are very focused just on their local communities and serving them the best that they can.
Yeah, well, there's an expectation, I think, that goes with the competitive level that I don't have or maybe understand as well. Again, referring to people coming from other competitive TCG backgrounds, they have a set expectation of judges and how they conduct themselves and what they're looking for. And I'm worried that I don't necessarily meet the level of the expectation for competitive judges, and I don't have the experience and I don't know what to expect. We never really had that resource until, recently the LSS has the judge program and they're starting to do seminars and stuff that I'd really like to find time to get in and listen to some of them and learn from these people that have hundreds of events experience and years of event experience. Have you been able to attend any of those seminars or events?
Yeah, I absolutely have. And honestly, Shea, with all of the experience that you have with judging every single season in Calgary since the very first RTNs, you downplay your own skills and experience a lot. You are more than qualified to give one of those presentations.
I don't know about
that. But let's move on then. This is a really good transition into our main topic for today, which is tier 2 events. Tier 2 events are a tier of events that include the RTNs that we've been talking about. So tournaments on a local level, I think a couple hundred of them worldwide each season. So it's not something as rare as a Calling or Battle Hardened, but it's not as common as something like an Armory. And before we really dive deep into this, I'm the disclaimer guy, so I'll just add a disclaimer. Any information that we are giving here or any suggestions that we are making is valid as of May of 2023. If our podcast is lucky enough to survive into next year and people are going through the back catalog, maybe there's something new and it looks completely different and there's different guidance. I would always encourage any prospective judges or players to seek the most up-to-date resources and information available on Judge Hub, from the official website, from your local store or community. So before anything else, please just keep in mind everything we're saying is temporal and subject to change. But Shea, why don't you tell us what exactly is a tier 2 event?
A tier 2 event is probably the first introduction into competitive rules level enforcement. So a bit harsher in penalties for mistakes, mistriggers, as well as one of the biggest things is the prizes that are being awarded and what's at stake for the event. It's not just promo items necessarily. It's, PTI invites to major events, exclusive cold foils, as well as
Nationals qualification.
Yes,
it's a big one for RTNs coming up. Yeah.
That was what I was looking for. So what is competitive rules level enforcement?
Well, like you said, it's a little bit harsher than the casual enforcement level when it comes to things like, oops, I made a mistake, can I take that back? Or even when it comes to fixing something like, hey, I drew too many cards. What do I do now? However, it is not as harsh as the professional rules enforcement level, which is something you would see at something like a pro tour. So this is a level of rules enforcement that is designed to balance the integrity of a competition with still educating everyone, making sure everyone's having fun, but just keeping in mind that we are playing for some stakes here, that there are prizes on the line. So yeah, the competitive REL I do like quite a lot. Before, we only had 2 rules enforcement levels, but I forget the exact date when the third one, the competitive REL, was introduced. I think it's been very appropriate for this level of tournament. I don't think people should be afraid of competitive REL though, and playing for a judge or playing under the supervision of a judge. I mean, is playing or is having a judge present in an event something that you're used to? Again, coming from more of a board gaming background.
No, it's very new. I think I'm in a unique position to a lot of people in that I was the judge. So I had a different perspective being the judge before I ever became a player at an event that had a judge. So, but yeah, people shouldn't be scared or nervous. It's the judge is there to help you. They're not there to punish people for mistakes. They're there for clarifications, pace of play, make sure that people are playing in a timely manner. Facilitate the game moving forward. That's what they're there for, and they do have a role to maintain the integrity of the game if something else arises. So people shouldn't be scared to be at an event with a judge, let alone call a judge. Be comfortable in calling a judge, and just if you have a question, bring them over. Even if it's a simple question, they're there to help you understand what's happening and what's going on. And you're not going to get punished. You're not going to get kicked out for, asking a question. I like those questions, the simple, easy ones to help people move on and just be comfortable in the event. The event itself is already nerve-wracking enough, and then to have to call a judge about something, again, just keep talking about it, creates more anxiety, and I don't want people to have that feeling. Just to touch on something, you mentioned the third rules enforcement level is actually professional, so I don't mean to correct you.
Yes.
It was originally casual and competitive, and then they added the professional one, so yeah.
You are a historian. Perfect. Yeah, and just to add to what you were saying there, I'm not used to playing for a judge either. Again, with my background being more in board games, and I was really nervous going into that first RTN in 2021. I remember once I drew too many cards because I didn't arsenal a card, so I kept one, and I drew 4 new cards, and then put them all into my hand, and oops, I had 5 cards in my hand. My opponent was a very experienced card game player, just instantly put his hand up and yelled judge. And at that moment, like, I was kind of freaking out inside. Like, was I going to get disqualified? Is everyone going to think I'm a cheater now? Like, all these thoughts go through your mind because I was not used to those calls being made. If this happened in an armory, we would have figured it out. It's like, oh, which one was the 5th card? Oh, okay. What do I do with that? But there was a fix that I remember that you gave that was fair. I think I had to show my hand to my opponent, and he picked one to put on the top or bottom of my deck. Ever since getting judge called, then I've learned this lesson. I always put my kept cards on my playmat on the combat chain, so I always see how many cards I'm going to have in my hand. So I have learned that lesson, and now I'm comfortable making judge calls, putting my hand up, asking for a call, or even when my opponent wants one as well. I know it's very normal for an event like this.
As we're talking here, I'm just thinking that if players are listening and it is going to be one of your first events, go find your judge, talk to them, find out their name, introduce yourself, give them a little background of your experience, and even maybe something that you're worried about or concerned about, and create that rapport and find out how that judge is, and you'll find them to probably be a super nice person and engaging. So that would be a recommendation of mine, I think.
Yeah, one other thing that you can do as a player, and also to help your judge, if you have a newer scene, if this is perhaps the first time your store has had a chance to host an RTN, is get used to making judge calls at your armories, and just clarify with your opponent, hey, there's an RTN coming up. Do you mind if we pretend that this was at an RTN, and if I have a question, instead of us two figuring it out, we'll call a judge? That would help the judge get some experience in taking calls. It would also just get you more comfortable with the concept of calling a judge. So the next time you have a rules question in your game, instead of saying, oh, okay, we think it works like this, let's just keep playing and maybe we'll figure it out after, just put your hand up, just ask, hey, so-and-so, can you help me with the judge call here? And whenever they have time in their game, or hopefully they've finished up, they can come and help you. They'll help them gain some confidence. If they need to look something up, then it'll get them used to using those tools that they have. And you'll get used to just calling for help whenever you need to.
As a player, one of my favorite things to do to a judge is ask them for time. Very simple. Nobody gets upset at it. I always also make sure that I talk to my opponent and say, hey, I'm going to call the judge over, ask about time. Do you mind? And it's very easy. It's not even a rules question. There's no right, there's no wrong. There's nothing to stress over.
So Shea, what are some other tips that you can give to players as a judge for how they can make their first experience successful going to one of these tournaments?
Something as simple as bringing a printed deck list. That way you don't have to worry about your writing skills. It's printed, it's all legible. You can do the math to make sure that you have the 80 cards for your deck list, because making last minute changes and scribbling stuff out on the piece of paper was probably not a good thing for you or your deck list registration. You don't want there to be any mistakes or any confusion. Something as simple as set realistic expectations. How much preparation have you gone into this? Are you doing 4 hours a night, hard testing, writing down all of your matchups and learning everything? Or you just kind of played in armories and gone, yeah, I hope I do good. And if that is what you're doing, maybe don't set winning the tournament as an expectation. Set a simple goal. And even on the side of that, not performance related, set a task that may be something that you're not very good at. Like you mentioned tunic triggers when we were talking about this before the podcast. Try and hit every single tunic trigger all day and make that a goal, and see if you can remember that, because in high pressure situations, it's difficult to look at all of the things that are in front of you. Flesh and Blood can be a very complicated game state. In an event like an RTN, you don't want to propose the question to your opponent of, can I have my tunic trigger? Because that puts them in an awkward situation. It puts you in an awkward situation. They look like a bad guy if they say no. And just, if you miss it, it is what it is. Try and remember and move forward from that. Just enjoy the day. Take in the moments that you're not playing in. Hovering over a shoulder of a friend, watching them maybe play out a match and maybe win a really tight one, or talk to some people that are new visiting from out of town, get to know people. Just take in the day so that it's more than just match after match, win or lose after win or lose. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, that's all fantastic advice, and really these tournaments are special, especially for scenes like ours in Calgary. It's hard for us to travel to all of these callings and battle hardens that are 2 time zones away on the eastern part of the US and all of that. So we try our best to make these tournaments special and a great experience for everyone. I think just from less of a high-minded perspective, because Shea, you covered a ton of good stuff there. Just, make sure your deck list is in order. Having the printed list also stops you from making bad decisions the morning of, like making last-minute changes to your deck. It never goes well. Well, maybe not never, but it very rarely goes well tinkering with your deck the morning of a tournament. So if you just bring the deck list, print it off, make a couple copies, for backup, and just hand it in. It's a big stress off your day and gets rid of that temptation. Definitely check your deck box. Make sure there's no extra copies of cards floating in there. make sure that all your sleeves are good, that you don't have any cards that are marked or damaged. One thing that can stress out people that have never been deck checked before is being deck checked. And the last thing you want is for, it's a horrible thing for a judge to discover that a player has been playing with a marked card, or a player has been playing with 82 cards accidentally, and you can't prove that they haven't been using all of them. Stuff like that, just make sure everything's in order. Don't put yourself in that position, or the judge in that position either. I think that's just the last advice that I would have.
Nice. Yeah. That's like the more player centric, and this is a judge podcast, so I guess we should probably talk about how do we prepare as judges, right?
Are we a judge podcast?
I don't know. Are we? I think so.
We're judges and casually competitive players.
Sure. But as a judge, what do you do to prepare for an event such as a tier 2 event or even a tier 3 event?
Well, first of all, I think the basics: take care of yourself. So make sure you have water, you have snacks, and if I need a break, because being a judge involves a lot of walking. In my opinion, to do your job properly as a judge, you should be there. You shouldn't be sitting behind a desk somewhere just waiting for someone to do something. You should be observing. You should be watching. You should be letting everyone know that you're there, because people will be more likely to just grab you for a question if you're right there versus if you're sitting behind a desk halfway across the store. But at the same time, you need to make sure you set aside time for your own breaks, to have some water, to get off your feet for a couple minutes. So just the fundamentals of taking care of yourself. The second key, before I go into more of the technical stuff, is to make sure that you talk with the tournament organizer / the game store that's running your event, and just to be very clear about your expectations for what you're expected to do. It's like, hey, if someone asks about something to do with the store, it's like, hey, how much is this? Or can I buy that? Who do I go to? Who's going to be my buddy from the store side that I can throw all those questions to? You can also ask, am I expected to be the scorekeeper, or will someone from the store be available to help with that? So you want to take care of all of that stuff in advance. You don't want to be learning midway through the event when there's a million things going on that, hey, you should have been running Gem this whole time as well. I guess before we go into the nitty-gritty, Shea, is there anything else about just preparation and establishing those conversations with the TO?
I just have one little one, and it's a hard one for some people, and it's your compensation as a judge. What is the store providing you? You should be compensated for your time there, I think. Just, it might be a chocolate bar if you're okay with that, or it might be tens of dollars an hour. It's up to you to decide what your time is worth to the store and your relationship with them, and go from there. But it should be something that should happen. You shouldn't just expect that, I'm going to get $50 for the day, or I'm going to get a box of sealed product for there. You need to, again, set those expectations with them. And they're not going to, they're not going to get mad at you, or they're not going to dump you as your judge for it. But yeah, just be confident in what you think your time is worth.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. And it does say typically in the retailer FAQ for each event that the judge promos provided, which LSS gives the stores for free or for the cost of shipping, as I understand it, that is not a replacement for compensation. That is a gift to the judge or the judge team from LSS to those individuals. Whatever additional compensation between the judge team and the store should be discussed beforehand. Going back to the technical nitty-gritty side of it, just to practice all the basics. So from a comprehensive rules perspective, to understand the meta that you're likely to see, and just to understand what the questions that typically accompany those heroes would come up. So if it's going to be an illusionist meta, I'm just going to make sure I really understand Phantasm, I understand all the different auras. Or if I'm expecting a warrior kind of meta, I would expect myself to be very well drilled on stack resolution, on paying costs, all of that. And be prepared for all of those edge cases that you might see as well as the latest errata bulletins and all of that. And on top of that, from a policy perspective, be very, very, very familiar with the fixes for common mistakes. So every tournament, you're going to see, oops, I accidentally drew too many cards, my sleeves stuck together, or you made the same mistake as I made in the first RTN and forgot about the cards you had stranded, and you drew 4 more cards. So the fixes to those are very prescriptive in the policy. So you should be able to just hammer through those. One thing that I'd like to tell new judges is policy is your friend. It gives you a backstop. Because if players don't like a ruling or why is this trigger missed, they can't blame the judge. They can blame policy if they want, but they can't blame you for just enforcing what's on paper. So really use the policy as your guidebook. You do have the discretion to make deviations as the head judge, but when you do that, you start putting yourself at risk. This is a pretty complicated topic, certainly be well beyond the scope of this conversation, but I think the key message is just to be very familiar with the policy as it relates to those very common situations that you're going to run into: missed triggers, drawing extra cards, minor game rules violations, and all of that. I guess, Shea, do you generally agree, or are there anything else that you would add to that?
No, you are covering it very well and in depth.
Sometimes we do get stumped, though, and Shea, when someone asks you something and it stumps you, I guess, what's your go-to?
So me personally, I have a laptop powered in somewhere, and part of my preparation for the morning is to find a good table with some space and power, load up my laptop, and I open up those discords, the rules and policy pages. I have a page for the release notes. Control F is one of your best friends if you're using a keyboard, so that you can bring up the find in page and just type in the keyword that you're looking for. So missed trigger or replacement effect, whatever it might be, or even a key card that you're not familiar with because somebody's playing something a little bit deviant from the meta, and so that you can quickly find that resource, read it, and figure out the appropriate fix or how a certain ruling works. So that's one of the things that I do so that I can make quick, timely calls on the day of.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And as a judge, you're not expected to know everything at the drop of a hat. You have all the resources of the internet available to you. So take the time to get the call right. There's no pressure to just make a ruling on the spot.
Yeah, no, and that's a good point. Take the time. You will feel like you're under pressure because the clock is ticking down, but you as the judge, you have the ability to have a conversation with the TO and be like, this table needs 5-10 minutes, whatever it is, because you took the time to make the correct ruling. And that's okay. Just delays the day a little bit, but you really want to make sure that you get that rule right.
Exactly. And frankly, there's always going to be one slowest table. And if you have 20 tables and you spend 5 minutes with the table, hopefully it's an aggro mirror. Hopefully it's not going to extend the time anyway. But even if it did, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. It's okay.
I guess just to go back, and we're just going to step away from I guess how to prepare as a judge, but you mentioned just enjoying the moment, and this is applicable to the players, but also to the judges. And in fact, I remember judging my first RTN. I was incredibly stressed out, like cheering for everyone simultaneously from Calgary in the room to win their games. Which like just enjoying every second of it while also being very stressed. We do treat these events as special events in our community in Calgary. There's always something going on after at one of the local pubs or the Denny's if it's gone on for too long. we really try to make the most of it from a community perspective, just to celebrate everything. I know, Shea, you're really big on that. I was pretty reluctant to start going to these social events afterwards for quite a while, but you've been a big proponent of that for a long time.
Yeah, one of the things for me is the event is the excuse and the people are the reason. Community is important to both of us, and one of the easiest ways to create a tighter community and help it grow and expand, bring in new players, is to go out for dinner, go out for beers, whatever people are comfortable with, and reminisce of the day that just went by and just talk and get to know people. You don't even have to just talk about flesh and blood. If you're flesh and blood out, get to know people on a personal level if you want. The people that are going out are going to be the people that want to join the community and grow and have conversations. And the people that don't want to be a part of it, they're just going to go. So you don't have to worry about people that are, reluctant to talk or maybe really upset at their performance of the day. They'll probably go away because they're not having a good day. And it gives everybody an opportunity, again, to sit around a table and chit chat and celebrate milestones, wins, losses, whatever, So yeah, I think that's one of the best ways of cultivating that relationship with other people and growing the community.
Yeah, and you mentioned keeping track of everyone's wins and losses and successes. It sounds a little bit hokey, but building the lore of a community, I think, is important. Just keeping track of the storylines, the heroes, the villains, who just got screwed by a run of bad luck or who ran super hot. And those kind of storylines, I think, are really important to local scenes like ours. And these tier 2 events, again, give us an excuse to say, hey, that's that player over there. They're always on the bubble. I wonder if that's going to happen to them again. Or, man, do you remember the run that player had? They went undefeated in Swiss, but then had the worst luck at quarterfinals and felt so bad for them. And can they rebound for the next turn? Like, all those kinds of stories I'm a huge sucker for. And I do my best to remember each player's personal storylines coming out of those tier 2 events and just try to sprinkle them in conversation when I see them again in armories, or if they're having a bit of a bad day, or even, if it comes up in the next tier 2 event. These events are so awesome for that exact reason, and that's a huge reason why I get so excited whenever it's RTN or PQ season around here.
Yeah, you mentioned the watching somebody's, I guess, results, and I think it's Isaiah started out in a skirmish at 10th, and then the next skirmish he made 9th, and then he actually made top 8 in the following skirmish. And it's a really cool trend to watch him grow and find more and more success. And it hurt every time that he bubbled out. But, it's a cool story arc to see a person finally achieve that goal of top 8. We were talking, you mentioned earlier about wins and losses and villains and heroes. And Felix isn't talking about literal, I won a game, I lost a game. Could have been, I'm a combo deck and I got to do my combo one time today. I didn't win, but it did the thing that I wanted to do. And that's a success. And the villains aren't the mean people in the room. They're just maybe somebody that you have a rivalry with that you always lose to in top 8 or whatever that is. They can still be a good person.
Absolutely true there. I do know that there's some people that have some cursed matchups or really bad matchups into individuals specifically. I think Sam actually said he has a bad matchup into Adam, like our Adam.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
that's funny.
Just that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a big sucker for storylines at the end of the day, and armories happen so frequently and they're awesome. But you usually don't get too much of a storyline from them. But when there's a little bit of stakes on the line, there's a top cut, there's single elimination bracket at the end. You can get some very memorable stories coming out of them, and
absolutely
love that. I think that about wraps up our main topic. I guess any closing thoughts, Shea? I mean, this is a topic we're both very passionate about. I feel like we could talk for hours on these.
Absolutely. Just one thing for me personally, and it's not true to everybody, is to have fun. Again, they're competitive events. I understand that, but my goal is it is a hobby, and it's to have fun, whether I'm judging, whether I'm playing, enjoy the day, take in those moments, make those friendships. How about you?
Couldn't agree more. Perfectly said. Well, let's move into our random topic for the day.
Our fluff.
Our fluff, yeah. And Shea, I keep on bugging you about this. Shea is very special, very unique, you would say, among adults, in that he's part of a functional, regularly meeting Dungeons and Dragons group that meets weekly. And I trust that most adults listening to this podcast, if they try to set up a D&D campaign, then it lasts for about 3 weeks before people start saying, oops, I have an appointment. Oops, my kid's sick. Oops, I need to wash my hair. And all
whatever
these other
little
excuses.
excuse.
But or maybe this is just me and everyone's trying to ignore me. But Shea, you have to let me know. First of all, tell me about your D&D campaign, and at some point I'm going to ask you about your secret, about how you get multiple adults with jobs together once a week at a set time to play this game consistently.
Yeah, the current Dungeons and Dragons group, we started with Waterdeep Dragon Heist, and we concluded that campaign, and we moved into the follow-up campaign of Dungeon and the Mad Mage. We just made it to Skullport in Undermountain, and we have a bunch of quests that we need to finish off there. And it was a way long and arduous process that it should have been. I think it took us 8 sessions to get from Waterdeep to Skullport, because we're video gamers and no floor can go less than 100% explored before moving to the following level.
Oh, you're those kinds of video gamers. I typically am a minimum completion kind of gamer.
Oh, are
because
you?
of my impatience.
Oh,
not because I'm speedrunning.
Most people I know just are like, "Yep, I got a quest over here. This map piece is unexplored. I have to go over here." It's like saving potions for the right health battle or right boss battle.
Mm-hmm. All right. So are you a player or are you a DM?
In this campaign, I am a player. I started the group as the dungeon master, and it became apparent after a year and a half that I could not keep devoting the amount of time that I needed to set up the campaign on a weekly basis. So one of my friends took on the difficult process to be the dungeon master for our group. And we are not the easiest group to dungeon master. We're a bunch of passive players who can't make decisions, and he has to ask us 50 times in a session, be like, "So what are you guys doing?"
Yeah, the DM nightmare. The players expect Matthew Mercer, and all they do is stare at you, waiting for you to monologue. Yeah. No, that's good. And what class do you play? Are you like a frontline leader or caster?
Or as I would consider myself the voice of the group a lot of the time. Just on a personal note, there's always a group leader. A lot of my friends are very quiet, reserved people, so somebody has to be the starter of a lot of initiator of conversations and events. And so I specifically took a role that was not that. So my character for this campaign is a Kenku Soul Knife Rogue. Originally, when I looked into the idea of Kenku, is they have the mimic feat. So a lot of people think that you can't talk, and that's not true. A Kenku can talk. They're just mimicking words that they've heard before. So as a fun little thing, I downloaded a couple of audio programs, and I would play sound bites as my mimic pieces and get a good chuckle out of playing those. And I've stopped that because I didn't want to make it like overbearing and obnoxious of hitting all these sound bites for 2 years.
Yeah, imagine if I had a soundboard, I would be really obnoxious.
Well, it is. I would play like Arnold Schwarzenegger quotes, or it's not a tumor.
Oh boy. No, that's awesome. And well, you never told me your secret again to maintaining this group and not having it fall apart when everyone flakes out. I mean, is there any special sauce or?
thought you said you were going to ask me in a later episode, but that's fine. It honestly, it comes down to commitment. It sounds dumb, but the people in the group have to be committed to the idea of the time that you set to play on a weekly basis or whatever schedule basis. That's actually important. That not that the commitment, it's actually that commitment is important and trumps all of the other things that's on their schedule that they're doing on a day-to-day basis, whether it be laundry or their hair, like you mentioned. That and the group that I play with, I feel like those people have made that commitment, or that commitment is that important that we all meet. Sometimes people are late. That's okay. But we've also been a group of friends since like grade 1 in elementary school. So I think that's an unfair advantage to a lot of D&D groups that are picked up from a message board or off of a piece of paper on a cork board in a co-op. So we have a relationship, and their time is important to me, and I don't want to discredit that they sat down at a desk because we play online at that time. And so it's important to me to honor that and respect that. That's their time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I am disappointed that the answer apparently is nepotism and not not anything else.
So, sorry to disappoint.
All right. No, thanks a lot for sharing that, Shea. And
Yeah.
I think that wraps up our episode for today here.
I think so. As usual, thank you for joining us on the IP2 Podcast. You can follow us on our socials at
IP2 Podcast on YouTube and Twitter. IP2 Podcast at wraith.social on Mastodon.
the update for each set. I'm drawing a blank. That's what it's called right now.
The release notes?